Yes, we can create AI with the capacity to have an experience in the biological sense. LLMs, as we know them, are not sentient and not conscious, despite the fact that roughly 60% of people believe that it has some form of consciousness. LLMs, as we know them, spit out the most likely string of text. However, that is not the only kind of AI out there, and it can be combined with other stuff. I'm not just talking about things like neurosymbolic reasoning, which could give AI a set of rules for which to understand the world, I say understand, or spiking neural networks, which is AI that uses the spiking patterns in our own brains in order to create logic. There's also my favorite, which is physical reservoir computing, which is what our brains already do. Yes, a set of neurons come together and logic arises from their connections. We can do that too with synthetic systems. But if you want an AI that you can talk to, yeah, it's not out of the question to combine it with things that are capable of having an experience. When we get to that point, which, we're pretty darn close, we're doing the basics, I think we will have to actually have a conversation about sentience and consciousness, but we'll talk about it. Now, I do want to take a moment to talk about some ways that we can make intelligent systems, and you might call it artificial intelligence, but it's not really colloquially what we think of as artificial intelligence, and that is making cyborgs. This, by the way, is a form of science that I just don't think should happen. Yes, I too have my limits. You can make cyborg animals. This is largely done with insects, and I think it should stay with insects, but yes, you can take a robot that has some intelligence and problem-solving capability, and you can combine that with the ability to be controlled by a person. This is really good for things like search and rescue, but also I feel like it's a step too far. When us humans have BCIs and connect with computers and control computers or robots, we are also turning ourselves into a cyborg robot. That is kind of cool, and while I don't support it for the average everyday person, and I do not think the technology is there yet to the point where you would want to do this recreationally, it's pretty neat. When it comes to our friends of brain organoids, yes, the tiny human brains that you can grow from stem cells in a literal jar if you want to, yes, the technology is moving pretty quick. They could potentially be combined with LLMs, and that has been done to some degree. When you have an organoid working with AI to do things like learn language and recognize simple speech, or even playing games like Pong or Pac-Man or controlling robots, you are combining them with AI. I think they would be very useful to operate agency for an LLM. So you can't create true agency with a computer, at least we're pretty sure we can't, because how does it really decide how to take on an action? It's a system of probability. It could be random, sure, but it's going to be based on patterns. If you have an organoid that can decide to get up and go, which they already can in simple video games, yeah, that would be true agency. I really hate to say it, but I think the pursuit of AGI, so artificial general intelligence, is chasing ghosts. We are not going to get it from LLMs, at least I'm pretty sure we're not going to get it. Unless you combine that system with other levels of reasoning and sensation, I don't think we're going to get something that looks like human intelligence. Also, what really does human intelligence mean? So we can combine an artificial intelligence system with something biological. We can give it an experience in the biological sense. We can give it sensation. We can combine it with parts from insects and give it things like smell, or we could give it hearing, and that could be used to control an LLM if you really want to chat with it. But at the end of the day, what really is intelligence and what separates it? And that is something that haunts me, and it bothers me that I don't think we can have a reasonable conversation about this just because of all the weirdness surrounding AI. Most people, when they interact with AI, are thinking of chatbots. And yeah, if you interact with a chatbot and don't look too close, it may seem kind of personable or may even seem intelligent. But when you really look at it, it fails to hold context. It doesn't understand what it's talking about. There is such amazing technology out there, and it is so much more interesting than an LLM. Now, one question I have about LLMs is the capacity to separate them into different lobes. So this can be done, and it is how our brains work. We have different layers that take care of different tasks, and the very same thing makes an LLM more functional. Now, one question I would consider is the lobe idea. So our brains are separated into different areas of our brain that take on different tasks and different specialties. The very same thing can be done with an AI. When I'm talking about combining AI into different parts, this is exactly what I mean. So if you are concerned that an AI isn't sentient, then make it technically sentient. It's a very cheeky way to do science. Now, this does create a semantic problem. First of all, not everyone is convinced that brain organoids are sentient. Yes, they can learn on dopamine. Yes, they can have a preference for ordered signals versus disorder, and that is a biological experience with how we think of it, but calling them sentient is problematic. I personally would call them sentient. Conscious? Probably not. Sapience? I hate the term sapience. It's sentient as we are concerned with it in terms of humans. I just don't think it's all that descriptive, and I do not think that humans are all that special. But yes, if we were to accept the tiny human brains you can grow in a literal jar if you want to are sentient and you can find that as part of an AI system, could you consider that AI system sentient? There's some microscopy of our tiny human brains. I really adore them. They are so cute. We are at the edge of what anyone ever thought was possible in science, and I guess you could say that like every 10 years we make some major discovery. You can put them together like Legos. You can specialize them. Is it particularly useful to use a human brain as part of computation? I guess. They use less power than traditional computation models, but I really don't think they're the future. I'm sorry. We are squishy, we require glucose, and we can easily be eaten by microbes. I want to see more complex physical reservoirs, and yes, our brains are, again, technically physical reservoirs. Now, I do have the question because it is really bothering me. Should we refrain from speaking about any of the spookier aspects of AI or any of the implications or any of the things we just really don't know because people tend to take it way too far? I want to say no, but I'm starting to see that side of it as things like AI addiction and AI psychosis become far more prevalent. Follow for more.